You're not broke because you don't earn enough. You're not broke because you're irresponsible. You're broke because of 7 specific types of purchases. And the terrifying part is, they all feel completely justified when you make them. Think about the last time you checked your bank account and felt that quiet panic, that slow, creeping confusion of where did it all go? You didn't go on vacation, you didn't splurge on anything crazy, you were being careful. And yet, the number staring back at you doesn't match the life you feel like you're living. That feeling has a name, and it has a cause. Because here's what nobody tells you. The purchases draining your account the fastest aren't the big, obvious ones. They're not the designer bags or the weekend trips. Those you can see, those you can feel guilty about. The real killers are invisible. They hide behind logic. They disguise themselves as necessity. And some of them, I promise you this, some of them actually make you feel responsible when you buy them. So let's talk about what's really happening. The first purchase that's quietly keeping you broke isn't a product, it's a subscription. But not the one you're thinking of. You've probably already canceled Netflix once. You know about streaming services. What I'm talking about is the second generation of subscriptions, the ones that charged you $4.99 for a free trial you forgot about, or the app that felt essential for 3 weeks and then silently renewed for the next 14 months while you forgot it existed. The psychology here is fascinating. Our brains are wired to feel pain most intensely at the moment of payment. A $60 charge hits hard, but 12 automatic charges of $4.99, your brain barely registers them. They slip under the emotional radar completely. Researchers call this the pain of pain, and subscriptions are specifically designed to eliminate that pain entirely. No friction, no moment of decision, just a quiet, invisible drain that compounds month after month. Here's a simple test. Right now, without looking at your bank statement, name every recurring charge leaving your account this month. Can you do it? Most people can't. And that gap between what you think you're paying and what you're actually paying, that gap is where a significant portion of your money disappears. But here's a strange part. Subscriptions aren't even the most psychologically sophisticated purchase on this list. Purchase number 2 is something almost everyone defends immediately when you bring it up: convenience spending. And I don't just mean food delivery, although that's part of it. I mean the entire category of purchases where you're not buying a product, you're buying time or ease. The Uber instead of waiting for the bus, the pre-cut vegetables, the dry cleaning instead of the iron, the ready-made meal kit. Individually, each of these is completely reasonable, sometimes even smart, but collectively, they create what psychologists call lifestyle creep by 1,000 micro decisions. You're not making one big choice to upgrade your lifestyle. You're making 50 small ones, each totally justifiable, each feeling like the obvious move in that particular moment. And the reason this is so hard to fight isn't laziness, it's cognitive load. By the time evening comes and you're exhausted from decision making all day, your brain genuinely doesn't have the resources to think, is this Uber actually worth $18 right now? It just says yes because yes is easier. And that's not a character flaw. That's human neuroscience. The problem is that convenience spending doesn't feel like spending. It feels like coping. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Now, this next one might make you a little uncomfortable. Purchase number 3 is what I call the optimism purchase. This is the gym membership you got in January, the online course you bought at midnight after watching an inspiring video, the book that was going to change everything, sitting on your shelf, still on page 12, the productivity app, the meditation app, the language learning app you opened 4 times. Here's what's actually happening when you make these purchases. Your brain isn't buying the thing, it's buying the feeling of becoming. Neuroscientists have found that the act of purchasing something connected to a future version of yourself triggers a dopamine release almost identical to actually achieving the goal. Your brain, in some deeply irrational way, experiences buying the gym membership as a form of going to the gym. The purchase feels like progress, and then the emotional reward fades, and the gym is still there, and the commute is long, and it's cold outside, but the money is gone. This is why self-improvement purchases can paradoxically reduce the chances that you'll actually improve. The purchase scratches the itch, The motivation dissolves, and you're out $200 with nothing to show for it except a slightly better self-image for about 48 hours. Think about how much money you've spent in the last 5 years on the idea of who you want to become. Now ask yourself honestly, how much of that converted into actual change? But here's where things get really interesting, because purchase number 4 is one almost nobody talks about. It's the social tax. The social tax is every purchase you make not because you wanted something, but because someone else's life made you feel like you needed it. It starts subtly. A friend posts a photo from a restaurant you've never heard of. Suddenly, you need to try it. A coworker mentions they just upgraded their phone. You weren't thinking about your phone before that conversation. Someone in your circle buys a house and suddenly renting feels like failing, and you start spending money on things that make your apartment feel more like a home you own rather than one you don't own. Psychologists call this relative deprivation, the feeling of lacking something not because you genuinely need it, but because someone nearby has it. And social media has turned this into a full-time psychological assault. You're not comparing yourself to your neighbors anymore. You're comparing yourself to a curated highlight reel of thousands of people simultaneously. And your brain is processing every single one of those comparisons as a real social signal. The result is you're constantly spending to close a gap that doesn't actually exist in a race you never signed up for against people who aren't even aware they're competing with you. Purchase number 5 is the one that physically hurts to confront: the sunk cost purchase. You paid $800 on a camera, you've used it twice, but you can't sell it because you already spent $800 on it, and that would mean admitting it was a mistake. So instead, you spend $120 on a lens, hoping that will finally make you use it, and then another $60 on a bag to protect it. And now you spent over $1,000 on something that has generated zero value in your life, and you're still not selling it. This is the sunk cost fallacy in its most expensive form, and it shows up everywhere. The gym you keep paying for because you already paid for it. The business idea you keep funding because you've already invested so much. The relationship, financial or otherwise, you stay in because of everything you've already put into it. Your brain hates loss. Loss aversion is one of the most well-documented phenomena in behavioral economics. Studies consistently show that losing something hurts roughly twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good. So your brain will perform incredible logical gymnastics to avoid accepting a loss, including spending more money to justify money already gone. The sunk cost purchase doesn't just cost you money once, it costs you money in layers, over and over again, each new purchase justified by the last one. Number 6 is the sneakiest one on this list: the celebration purchase. You got a raise, you hit a savings goal, you paid off a card, something genuinely good happened, and your brain immediately rewarded itself by spending money. Not a lot, just enough to mark the occasion, just enough to feel like you celebrated the win. And there's nothing wrong with that in isolation. The problem is that our brains are extraordinarily good at finding reasons to celebrate. Finish the hard week at work? Celebrate. Made it to Friday? Celebrate. Survive the difficult conversation? Celebrate. And each celebration is modest. Each one feels deserved. But what's actually happening is that your brain is using reward events as permission slips to spend. Any milestone, real or imagined, becomes a justification for a purchase. And because the brain is always hunting for rewards, the list of celebration-worthy moments is essentially endless. You feel like you're rewarding discipline, but what you're actually doing is interrupting every financial win with a financial cost. You take one step forward, then immediately take half a step back, and call it treating yourself well. And then there's number 7, the purchase most people never even recognize as a purchase: emotional insurance. This is the extra item in your cart that you added just in case, the backup plan you bought even though you had a plan, the second option you kept open because what if the first one didn't work out? You sign up for the premium tier because the free tier might not be enough. You order more food than you could possibly eat because you might still be hungry. You keep subscriptions running in parallel because you're not sure which one you'll end up using. Psychologically, this is anxiety spending. You're not buying a product, you're buying certainty in an uncertain world. And certainty, it turns out, has an almost unlimited price tag.
because anxiety is never fully satisfied. The just in case always has a next layer. There's always another possible gap to insure against. And here's the deepest truth about this one. The money you spend on emotional insurance rarely ever gets used. The backup plan collects dust. The premium tier's extra features go untouched. The second option gets thrown away. But the anxiety that created the purchase, it just moves on to the next thing. Once you start seeing these 7 purchases in your own life, something strange starts to happen. You don't just see them in stores, you see them in the moment before you click Add to Cart. You feel the exact emotional mechanism running in the background. The dopamine hit of the optimism purchase, the social pressure of the tax, the anxious reach for insurance. And awareness doesn't automatically stop the spending, but it changes the quality of the decision. Instead of spending unconsciously, you start spending with open eyes.
And that gap between impulse and action is where financial change actually lives. The money was always there, the awareness just wasn't. And once you notice these patterns, something else comes into focus. The deeper reason your brain keeps pulling you back toward these same purchases, no matter how many times you recognize them. That's exactly what I break down in this video, because understanding the purchase is only half the story. Understanding why the brain keeps choosing it is where things really get interesting.